Pleasure to have you here. My name is Frank Zaruni, and I am a professor at the Price School, and I oversee a bunch of programs, including this one, under our umbrella Center of National Defense and Public Safety, which is fairly new. But I wanted to, first of all, greet you and then introduce our dean in just a second, but give you a little bit of a context. You're looking at my grandmother, my father, my aunt, and my grandfather. I wrote an article 5 years ago on this day about the importance of women that we rise on the shoulders of. I rise on the shoulders of my grandmother who marched into the desert to die during the first genocide of the 20th century. She didn't die. She survived. Hence, I'm here. She married very late. She had lost an eye. And I lost my father 2 years ago. And my aunt actually still alive and lives in Istanbul, Turkey. So really the importance of women. I married one also. And she has been an amazing woman in caring for her mother at our house. She suffered a stroke and fell and broke a femur, and Jody took care of her. Then my sister-in-law was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. We moved her to our house. Jody took care of her. And then when that wasn't enough, I came up with a brilliant idea of having throat cancer. And it was a brutal treatment, but I did my best not to be a burden to Jody, but it was hard. I'm cancer-free today. In fact, about 3 days ago, I found out from my PET scan that I am cancer-free. So is my sister-in-law, but however, she has a number of other issues. So Jody takes care of them. But the good news is that we raised an amazing daughter as well, who happens to be a lawyer like me, in Dallas, Texas, who's expecting our first grandchild. So that's also a great news. And we get to see her this weekend as Jody wants to do a shower for her. So women in my life have been amazing. And that's why I wanted to give you this context that I'm so happy for you to be here. And I'm so happy for all of our women leaders to be here. And it's a great pleasure to certainly welcome you all. But before I do that, I'll ask our dean, Chris Boone. Dr. Boone comes to us from Arizona State and fairly new, I would say, but he has been an amazing leader for our Price School and with a steady hand at difficult times. But Dean Boone is really has been certainly my favorite. I don't say it because he's here, but still has been an amazing leader for our school. So really delighted that he's here today. Chris.
Thanks very much, Frank. You're my favorite person named Frank, just to be clear. On behalf of the Price School of Public Policy, it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you here today for this very special event. We have an extraordinary panel. Really looking forward to hearing their remarks. Before we start, I just want to remind everyone about the history of Women's History Month, which we're celebrating now. So it actually has its origins in California. California is always where the future happens first. The first one was actually a week. It wasn't a month long, and it was celebrated in Sonoma County. And then since 1987, it's been an annual monthly event under proclamation from the U.S. president. Women's history is now an idea that's spread to other parts of the world. So it's celebrated now in Australia, in Canada, Russia, and Ukraine, other countries around the world. And I think this idea of establishing Women's History Week and then Women's History Month is a great example of leadership and what leadership is about, which is what we're going to hear about today. So a group of people, women, had the courage to question what the status quo was. They developed something that was innovative, that was motivating. It was a mission and vision associated with what they wanted to do. They developed a strategy, and they found the resources to execute on those strategies. So this is a fantastic example of women being leaders and celebrating the leadership qualities that they bring. So to remind us, Women's History Month, which is every March, envisions a society that honors, recognizes, and documents the pivotal contributions of women to history, culture, and society. Its mission is to empower future generations by highlighting the courage, leadership, and achievements of women while fostering gender equity and correcting historical omissions. And there's 4 pillars that are celebrated through Women's History Month. 1 is celebrating achievements, highlighting the often overlooked social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. Number 2, educating and preserving, ensuring women's stories, leadership, and struggles are documented and taught for future generations. Number 3, empowerment, inspiring girls and women with courage, self-esteem, and the belief that they can lead and create change. And finally, action for equity, serving as a call to action to advance gender equality. So this extraordinary panel that we have here today, you're going to hear from them, and this is an amazing example of taking those principles and putting them into action in terms of the experience that they bring to the table and their vision and mission for what they're trying to achieve through their various responsibilities as leaders. So on behalf, again, of the Price School, it's my pleasure to welcome you here today, and we really look forward to hearing your comments and words. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. And just echoing Dean Boone and Frank's remarks, just a pleasure and an honor to be sitting up here with such incredible leaders. I have followed Chief's career for quite a while, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And Michelle, we've been on the board together, the Woman in Homeland Security. But before we get started, just a quick round of introduction. So to my far right is Michelle Constant. She's a CEO and founder of Constant Associates. And we have Councilwoman Anna Marie Quintana, and she is from the city of Bell. And then directly next to me is our Chief Amada Tingarides, and she is the first Black woman to serve as Assistant Chief for the Los Angeles Police Department. So just a quick round of applause for all of them. And today we're just going to have an open, candid conversation. I'm going to ask them some questions, and feel free to, add your input. And then we'll do a quick round of Q&A towards the end. So you will have an opportunity to ask the panel some questions as well. So just again, thank you everyone for being here this morning. Welcome, and let's jump into it. So the first question I have for the panel, and please, there's no order, just jump right in. What first drew you into public service, and when did you realize leadership was part of your responsibility and not just your role?
I started in the field when I was 17. I took an entry-level position at Kaiser Permanente doing security and emergency management. And we were looking at hospitals as secondary targets. We were doing syndromic surveillance. We were installing external decontamination facilities. And I fell in love. I just felt so called do the work. So that was my first call. And my second call came some years later. I had continued to work for Kaiser, built up their emergency management and continuity program. And I got a call from LA County, and they said, "Listen, Michelle, we've got a large weapons of mass destruction readiness project we need to have done. Would you consider starting a Constant Associates and helping us execute on that?" And I said, "Oh, this is another call. Let me answer the call." My third call came about 10 years ago. The business started to grow such that I didn't know how to navigate the business side. I knew I wanted to scale. I wanted to do more good, but I didn't know how. So I came back here to SC, and I got my MBA, and I learned more about running a business. So for me, it's been just a series of stepping up to the plate, ready or not, and answering the call. And on the leadership side, I can't say that I, necessarily planned to be a leader per se. It was more like, how am I going to lead this project? And how am I going to lead this team? And how am I going to lead this business? So I think for me, the leadership part was really wrapped into just a series of continuing to answer the call to serve.
So good morning, everyone. I think, first of all, Jessie, I've known Jessie since she was in her mommy's belly. Just wanted to put that out there. I worked at, crazy story. I worked at Robinson's May at the Lancome counter Yes, I was doing like makeup makeovers. And her mom worked across from me at, I don't know if it was, I can't remember the other perfume. And it'd get really slow. We were in our smocks and we would just talk to each other. And she was pregnant. And I would rub her belly and I'd say, oh, your baby's coming. And probably 15 years later, I meet Jessie and her mom was working for the city. And she's like, my daughter is at USC. I said, the one where I used to rub your belly when we were working at the makeup counters? And she said, yes. And so I feel like I've known her since before she knew who she was. So thank you for having us. And I'm so proud of you. And you could be sitting on this panel answering these questions too. So proud of you. So I think for me, my why and how I got into public service was watching my mother. My mother had me when she was 15 years old. No one knew she was pregnant. I grew up not knowing my father, and my mom just impressed the heck out of me. I wasn't supposed to survive. I was going to be a statistic. Born and raised in Watts in South LA. And she just impressed me every bit of the way, taking care of me and then going back to get her education. And she ended up being a nurse at USCMC in the 80s when shootings were out of control in South LA and gunshot victims were coming in and out of USCMC. And I just watched the passion that she had to care for others, while also I saw the city and the community that I grew up in get destroyed by gangs and drugs. And then to throw on top of that, my grandmother, who was one of the first female custody sheriffs for LA County Sheriff, and my grandfather, who served in the military. So it was just only right that I would get into public service and follow my heroes. And I was going to be a teacher. And I made the decision after Rodney King. And I saw the trauma and the fear and the conflict between the community that I loved in law enforcement. And I was driving in my 1965 Dodge Dart, listening to Power 106 Big Boy Radio. And Big Boy said, hey, LAPD's hiring. And I had just gotten my acceptance letter to go to college. I was going to be a teacher. And I said, I'm going to take that test. I want to give back to my community. And I snuck the whole 6-month process. My mom didn't know. I was getting letters and hiding the letters because she just knew I was going to go to college and become a teacher. And I joined Los Angeles Police Department in 1995. And my why and my compass was to go back to the community that I grew up in, to build relationships and trust and take the history and the culture to make a difference. And that has just been my core and my calling. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Chief. Somewhat similar. Leadership is kind of an amorphous concept, but really I interpret it as just stepping up, right? Stepping up and doing what needs to get done. So I ended up in public service in 2011, even though I feel like I've always, to some extent, been a leader and definitely been involved in advancing social issues. But as an elected official, I decided to run for office in 2011 for the city of Bell. The summer of 2010, I don't know if you recall, there was a big scandal where the city of Bell basically made world news, literally world news, because I lived in Spain for 3 years and my roommates from Spain were asking me, isn't that where you live? Because I used to wear my high school, I went to Bell High School, so I used to wear my high school shirt and it had like my name. So she's like, isn't that where you live? I'm like, yes, that's the city. My background is I'm an attorney and I used to do focus primarily in real estate finance law. So when the scandal broke out, I initially started because I wanted to challenge the election that was being, I guess, scheduled at the time. I felt I used to work as an attorney with the ACLU doing voting rights. So I felt that the structure and the election wasn't up to, it could have been done better. The advocacy was to do a recall. I felt like you can just do a regular election and not lead the population to think that a recall is necessary when it really is about empowerment versus hate, right? There's a different approach when you want to take people out versus trying to build something. So in the process of challenging it, I realized they pulled a little trigger on me. Technically, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here, but I was always registered to vote in the city of Cudahy because that's where my mother lives. I just never changed my address when I went away to school, but I lived in Bell. So when I was challenging this, the attorneys or whoever was involved did away with the requirement that people to run for office had to live and be registered to vote in the city of Bell 2 months prior. So that's unconstitutional. But by removing that requirement, they made me ineligible to kind of argue in courts that there was damages, because technically under the law, you can run for office. And my goal wasn't to run for office. My goal was to just have an election that was structured correctly. But by doing that, obviously I was like, oh my God, what happened here? They were kind of pulled a fast one on me. And I remember my college friend told me, it's like, this is pretty clever. I think the only way to change things is if you get inside, because they're not doing anything wrong. It's clever and it's not necessarily right. So that's how I ended up running for office. I should write a book on that alone. So that's how I ended up running for office. But my goal when running for office was literally, I ran for a 2-year term thinking this is going to be my contribution to the city of Bell. I'm an attorney. I do finance. I'll do it for 2 years. At that time, I was doing building entertainment centers, of which anchor tenants were movie theater. My thought process, and this is how naive I was my smallest project then was $40 million. I looked at Bell's fund. Bell's fund was $13 million. It's like, okay, I can restructure the finances. Here's $13 million, 2 years. This is my community service. Little did I know when I stepped in the level of corruption that existed. I mean, I always describe the city of Bell as a very sophisticated white-collar crime scheme, where it was well orchestrated. It was pension finance. It was liabilities. It was bond issuances. And here I am 15 years later running for re-election again. My city is far from where we were back then. But, politics, I think my calling came in with having the skill set and the passion and the desire to serve my people and do right by my people, because I think the LA Times did a horrendous job at painting my community in such a negative light and not really highlighting the work ethic and the passion. And, the city was not asleep at the wheel. We were very, very, very involved, but obviously there's other government forces that kind of oppress my community. And I just kind of took it upon myself to highlight how wonderful my community is. And that's why I continue to serve.
Thank you, Councilwoman. That's an incredible story, and just everyone on the panel, just at your why into getting into the work that you are in. Amazing. So kind of touching on that, we'll stay on the leadership topic. How has your understanding of leadership evolved as your responsibility has grown?
I can take that one. Like I said, leadership is kind of stepping up. One of the things that I've learned with leadership, it's not just stepping up to do, it's really inspiring folks to do themselves, right? So I'm a big advocate of education. I was just talking briefly about to her what we're doing in Bell. You can't do things alone, and you can't take it upon yourself to do things alone because you are really one person. But if you're, and I think I'm pretty good at this in terms of identifying talent, tapping into the person who's best equipped to do something. I surround myself with people who know more than I do, who have the same amount of energy, because you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you don't have that desire to work, right? Like not be lazy. In my family, you work, right? There's no such thing as idle time. It's like idle time is the devil's playground. You're always doing something. But I do feel like leadership has taken on a role. You have to motivate others and you have to get other people included. And most importantly, support what they want to get done. A lot of the things that I've done in Bell that have made me really popular in the community are not initiatives of my own. They're initiatives that I've supported because people have come forward. So, for example, in the city of Bell, the meetings were silent, right? One of the things that the council members were able to do is they had a lot of meetings that they were getting paid for, but those meetings never took place. So the first thing that I did was live stream every single council meeting. But that idea didn't come. I'm super not technology advanced. It was really a high school student that said, why don't we just put these online? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, live stream them. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. So I literally, took it upon myself and, hooked up with Channel 36, which is a channel that records all the council meetings. And lo and behold, the person who runs Channel 36 is a Bell High School graduate. So it really is about tapping into people who know what they're doing and running with their ideas and supporting them and getting that done.
I think also for women, we have to be comfortable in our leadership role and not apologize for who we are. I think oftentimes women, we're harder on ourselves than we need to be, and we feel like we always have to be one step ahead. And being comfortable with that. Jessie had mentioned I'm the first female Black to make assistant chief in the history of LAPD. And I remember when I put these 3 stars on, I thought it's no big deal. I didn't do it for this. I'm just Amada. And it took me a while to really understand. I don't want to use the word power, but really understand my responsibility as a leader and what this meant. And then me believing that it's no big deal that I'm the first. I'm just Amada. I'm just going to work. I'm just going to lead. I'm just going to motivate. Allowing yourself as a leader to go, whoa, this is a big deal. And it's not only a big deal, you have a responsibility to make sure you're not the last. And you have a responsibility to reach down and pick someone else up next to you and teach them how to lead. And so I think leadership first is about being comfortable and grounded that you are a leader and kind of erasing that self-doubt and being comfortable with being the boss. It's awkward, but let's get comfortable with that. And then ensure that you teach others, how to lead. So being comfortable with the uncomfortable, but understanding your role and how people perceive you. And when you're long gone, there should be no more talk of the first. It should just become normalized because you've led in that manner.
Thank you, Chief. Love those responses. For me, learning and evolving as a leader has really translated to 2 things. First one, I've noticed that as a leader, I listen way more than I used to, and I observe way more than I used to. And I think before I was so eager to look like a leader and act like what I thought a leader would act like. I would just talk and try to be the smartest person in the room. And what I've learned over time is that if I'm really charged with making the best decisions possible, I need to be armed with the right information, which often comes from other people. So I need to really take time, really, truly listen, and I need to observe. I need to be basically ready to pivot if we need to pivot. So that's first piece. Second piece is echoing my fellow panelists here, is that I need to make room for other people to lead. It's not about me coming in and taking over and fixing whatever needs to be fixed. It's about me making room for all the wonderful talent that surrounds me and my organization and enabling and encouraging and equipping them to lead. I found that, in scaling a business and bringing additional expertise to the table, I'm constantly surprised at the intellect and the talent that our team has. And if I just make some room for them, they really impress.
Thank you, Michelle. And to all of the panelists' points, just listening more, coming into your space, surrounding yourself with leaders. These are all great points here. And a little shameless plug, at the Institute, we also put on leadership courses for public safety. So there are a few flyers at the table over there if anyone is interested. We actually have an executive leadership program coming up in June, and we're going to hold that at our DC campus. So stop me afterwards if you're interested. And then just kind of moving on, and I'm going to get into some specifics a little bit, and we'll start here with you, Chief. If anyone is familiar with the Community Safety Partnership at LAPD, it's an amazing kind of program that Amada has created. And my question is, so your leadership in advancing the Community Safety Partnership model reframed public safety around relationships and trust, especially in the community. What did that experience teach you about leading institutional change?
I learned a lot. So the Community Safety Partnership, it's a relationship-based policing model that I definitely don't want to take credit for. It was the brainchild of a civil rights attorney, Connie Rice, and she had done a lot of work centered around social justice and community and gang intervention and prevention. And at the time, in the public housing developments in the community of Watts, we were averaging 7 homicides a year just between 3 public housing developments. And the relationship between that community and law enforcement was strained. We had skirmish lines, uses of force. It was very adversarial, and there was no trust. And Connie Rice stood up and said, we have to do better. And we need to make a change, and we can't do it in the old traditional LAPD way. And so I was called to sit down and have my meeting with her, and I was so nervous to meet this woman because she had sued LAPD so many times. She was a beast in the courtroom, and I was just in awe of her. And I was just a young sergeant. And I remember my boss said, you're going to sit down next to her. You're not going to say a word. You're going to listen. And I was just like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we get to this meeting, and I'm just staring at her. She's her beautiful hair, and she's Connie Rice. And she looks at me like, who's this kid? And I'm like, hi, my name's Amada. And she's just like, yeah, I hope you're going to be about the business. So, but long story short, really listening and learning and allowing a civil rights attorney to guide policing and ensure that we went into these communities utilizing our heart and knowledge and history with an emphasis to build trust and relationships, to break down those barriers and not over suppress the community. But once those relationships were built, begin to make change and do that in conjunction with the community. And that meant LAPD having to go into a community and say, I'm sorry. And I am apologizing for our past and our history. And if we can have truth and reconciliation and build some respect, collectively, we can make a change, because people shouldn't be dying. People shouldn't have conflict in communities where some of our lowest socioeconomic infrastructures are. And we have to have a holistic approach and working together to make that change. And so internally, people within the organization thought I was crazy. I got a lot of pushback. The officers that took a chance and interviewed to become part of this policing philosophy were made fun of. They were called footlocker cops and hug-a-thugs, and a lot of people said this wasn't going to work. And why are we putting resources in a community that doesn't even pay their taxes? I want these officers on the other side of town where we're tax paying. If we know people are dying in our communities and we have to make a change and do something different, why not put resources in that community? So internally, I had to fight to change culture to get our organization to understand it's the right thing to do, and that the people that live in these communities deserve the same type of policing that other communities deserve. And staying true to that and giving voice to that community internally and getting my agency to understand was very difficult. And I had to stay true to the mission. And I began to get the support of the community. And I could sit back and not say anything and let the community say, this is the right thing. and let the community speak for the work. And eventually, internally, our culture within Los Angeles Police Department started to change and how we looked at community engagement and community policing. And we made it okay for a police officer to dance in public, or give a kid a hug, or go to a school and read a book, to humanize each other. And then externally, the community began to say, I don't hate you anymore. I still don't like you. And then in time, it became, I want you to come to my daughter's wedding, or I'm inviting you over my house to have dinner. We had officers, we had a young kid that was living in Jordan Downs public housing development, and he was ran over by a car. And this is when I knew how impactful leadership is and change can be in a community when you work together. This young child was killed. He was ran over, and the family asked our officers to be pallbearers at the young child's funeral. And then the family asked, when they were lowering the casket into the ground, for the officers to turn on their lights at the cemetery to pay homage to that family. And that moment, to have that family from that community ask us to be part of that, was a game changer for our organization and for the community. And so I think when you talk about leadership and making change and doing more listening, we talked about listening, it's huge, and it can be extremely impactful. And now here we are 15 years later with this policing philosophy. Hundreds of officers have worked through this and promoted. And on top of having a board of police commissioners, an inspector general, audits, the LAPD has changed in so many ways as it relates to transparency and trust building and being a model for the nation as it relates to community outreach and engagement.
Thank you, Chief.
Sheriffs do a good job too. Sorry. You guys rock too, but.
And now, how large is the community safety partnership? It's not just within South LA anymore. It's expanded across all of Los Angeles.
It has expanded. We're in East LA, Boyle Heights, San Fernando Valley, Watts, South Los Angeles. We have approximately 130 officers that are assigned to that bureau, but the main goal and premise of it has extended throughout our organization.
That's amazing. And as you mentioned, it's a model across the nation now. And I'm actually writing a paper on it in my doctoral program. So it is something that is just incredible to see, especially being from South Los Angeles myself. And just really quickly, I have to give Chief her flowers. When I go to these community events and I see the way that she interacts with community members, and it's like their face lights up every time they see her. And I just think it's such a wonderful skill that I try to model myself. And just, again, I'm always in awe of you. So moving on. So Councilwoman Quintana, this one is for you. As an elected official accountable to your community, how do you balance policy, politics, and public expectations while maintaining ethical clarity?
Yeah, I got the question before, and I've been thinking about it. There's a huge advantage of having it be your home base, right? I am a product of the Bell community. My family originally were from South LA. I went to 28th Street Elementary School. A lot of people from South LA move over to the Southeast. A lot of Latinos move over to the Southeast. It's kind of like where we go, and then people from Bell move over to Downey, right? You just go that, keep going east. So we moved from South LA to the Southeast. My dad was a cook. My mom was a seamstress. She essentially worked for sweatshops. I went to Elizabeth Street Elementary School, Nimitz Junior High, and Bell High School. I was Bell High School's homecoming queen, student body president. I went away to school, came back, begrudgingly, quite honestly, because I had a very conservative family. I had a 9:00 curfew in high school, right? So very much like stay home, and again, very Catholic. So I came home in 2004. So I left in 1997, and I literally came back in 2004 after graduating from law school. That is my community. Right. So it's not difficult for me to make decisions because I am them. Whenever I have a doubt, I literally ask my mom, okay, what are the ladies going to think? What are people going to think? And her comment is just like, whatever feedback she gives me, that's what I'm able to implement. So for me, and then also, I am an attorney. I have finance background. So the policy comes easy because it's building cities. One of my favorite classes in college was called the American Suburb, in which we analyzed how cities were built. And that's kind of what I walked away thinking, I want to build cities. How am I going to do it? Et cetera, et cetera. So I ended up doing that. So the policy work is fine. I think what's hard is transmitting the message and transferring the need and why you do the things that you do to community. So for example, taxes have to go up. The city of Bell is heavily taxed and people always complain about that. But explaining to folks, this is how we fund activities. This is what services are made of. This is what we need in order to be able to continue providing services. Like that conversation is difficult to have because obviously it hurts people's pockets, but communities are strong and people are people. They understand, right? Inflation goes up, things cost more. And that conversation needs to happen. So I think for me, it's just more about what program do I create in order to create, to transfer that knowledge and really spending the time to explain to community and also taking the time to hear their concerns, right? Because everyone's financially distraught. We just need to understand and validate that concern and then move forward and come up with a plan to implement.
Thank you. And Michelle, this one is for you. So your work spans federal emergency management and advisory roles. What have you learned about leading across sectors where collaboration is essential?
Great question, Jesse. I'd say 2 key takeaways for me. The first one, in terms of collaboration and trying to get things done. First one is when you're at the table and you're trying to negotiate something, collaborate, move something across the finish line. First thing is make sure that you have the decision maker at the table. Big thing. Many times we have not had that, and it's been a significant obstacle. So, first thing is to check, make sure this is not a representative of the decision maker. This is not someone else that doesn't have decision-making authority. If you are going to spend the time at the table laying out your case and having a meaningful conversation about whatever you want to put forward, make sure that that's a decision maker that's across the table. That's the first thing. Second thing is understand what's motivating the person on the other side of the table. And it may be multiple people, but you want to have a good understanding of what levers you can pull. What's motivating them? What's the carrot that they want, or what's their pain point? Is it that they have grant funding that they need to spend by a certain day and they need to accomplish these 3 things for their grant packet? Is it that their boss is sitting in on the meeting and they are looking for a promotion and so they really need to get this done? Is there a gap? Maybe there's been a deficiency and so they're on the hook, maybe politically, maybe it's an optics thing. So it's really key to understand what's motivating the person on the other side of the table and trying to find a solution that works for everybody. There have been many times when you get the decision maker at the table, you understand what the pain points are, you understand what is motivating them, and you can find a winning solution that works for everybody. And that's really the most efficient way that I've seen things get done. That's also the way that I've seen pitfalls, is if we have a gap in either of those 2 areas.
Thank you, Michelle. That's great advice. And kind of moving on, how do you bring your authentic self? And this question is open to all. And I kind of thought of this question because one thing that I have faced throughout my life is kind of like imposter syndrome. And so how do you bring your authentic self to the workplace without diminishing any part of you to, and I put this in quotes, fit in?
That's a great question. You know that saying they say, you do you, boo? You've got to be true to yourself. And be unapologetic about your true self. And I think working in a predominantly male organization, And, I talked earlier about feeling like we need to be one step ahead, study just a little bit harder. You're in a uniform. Are you smiling too much? Are you laughing too much? Are you hugging too much? I hug everybody. And I'll never forget, someone came up to me and they said, "You're on the 10th floor now," because our building is 10 floors. And it's like, you made it to the top. You're on the 10th floor. And I was giving someone a hug and saying hi and jovial. And someone said, "You're on the 10th floor now. You shouldn't be acting like that." And I said, "Acting like what?" "Well, you're hugging everybody and you're saying good morning and you're loud and everyone can hear you." And I said, "That's too bad." I said, "I'm going to change the 10th floor then. Because if you're a leader and your job is to motivate and to push an organization, we're almost a 10,000. Well, we're a 9,000 person organization, LAPD. And when you're one of 4 at the top, everything you do creates the standard and the expectation of the direction you want this organization to move in. So if I say good morning and I give hugs, what am I telling that patrol officer that's going out and responding to a 911 call on your worst day? I'm telling them to greet someone with respect and humility, to say good morning, good afternoon. The reason why I pulled you over is because you ran a red light, and have a nice day. And so I think for me, the imposter syndrome, being comfortable with who you are, not changing because there's a perception from other people on how you should be on the 10th floor, and realizing that we are in the business of public safety, neutrality, respect, procedural justice, and constitutional policing. And you have to convey all of that. Seems impossible, but you have to convey all of that. And it starts with being authentic in who you are and not allowing the system to change you, but you as a leader changing the system and getting people to move in the right direction.
Every day I start my day thinking about what my priorities and values are. And that's what guides me, and that I think keeps me very authentic. So when I think about my priorities at work are continuing to execute on mission, being a superior employer. Those are my 2 priorities at work. And if I can take action toward those 2 priorities, whatever that looks like, then I'm in alignment with my authentic self. At home, it's really prioritizing my children. So if I need to take action in that regard, maybe I'm, leaving at 4:30 to make a softball game. Maybe I'm helping my kid with my homework. Maybe I'm arranging my phone call so that I can go to a play and watch my children. Then I'm being my authentic self. And I'm presenting that whole self to the world. So I'm not hiding to anyone that, hey, I got to get up and I have a conference call at 5 a.m. because I need to move this ball forward in terms of executing on mission. Hey, I need to leave a little bit early because my daughter's going to ballet. So I'll see you tomorrow. And I think as long as I live in a space that honors my priorities and I present that to the world, then I'm really truly living my authentic self.
Thank you, Michelle.
I always say, I don't know how to be anyone else but myself. But there's still elements there, right? Growing up, I kind of felt like I was a little too much, right? I'm very high energy. I always say that my biggest blessings are that I'm not lazy and I'm a quick learner. And most people, I feel like, are kind of lazy or just, they don't have the energy that I do. So I remember an anecdote. When I moved from South LA to Elizabeth Street, I didn't really have any friends, right? Because I was brand new. if you guys are familiar with LAUSD, we used to have the track system. Mm-hmm. So I lived in B track. I lived in A track area, but because I got there late, they placed me on B track. So I didn't really have any friends. And I remember coming home and telling my dad, nobody likes me. I don't have any friends. He's like, what do I have to do? And my dad telling me, he's like, you don't have to do anything. They just don't know you. I'm like, so what do I do? He goes, just be yourself. And literally, it's such a small little anecdote, but that really has been kind of like the message that I live throughout my life. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. They just don't know who I am. How do I share that, right? But as you go through life, you do kind of find yourself shunning a little bit of who you are. Like, I just actually right now, even in this category, you know, I'm an Ivy Leaguer. I went to Yale undergrad. I have a master's in economics, and I was a professor at 23. I taught statistics for 3 years, and then I went to law school to be a professor. Then I came back and served as an elected official. So like my credentials are pretty high, and sometimes it intimidates people, right? So you have to kind of strike a balance where you don't intimidate folks and you're still very relatable. So I feel like I'm too much in that area, so you have to kind of bring it down. And then sometimes you're way too modest, and you have to bring up your credentials up because, you know, as an elected, and I always say this, I didn't suffer discrimination, I felt, until I got into politics and in the academic setting where I find myself, you know, talking politics in like the Central Valley or in Sacramento, and people are surprised that I have ideas, that I'm a go-getter, that I'm actually an attorney, that that I'm not just this Latina that's just advocating for like a little, you know, downtrodden community. So striking where you're not too much at any given level, where you want to shine and show your intelligence, but not do it in a way that maybe intimidates people because it's off-putting. That balance is difficult. And it really is about reading the group, reading the room, and bringing what's necessary. So, like I said, I don't know how to be anything else but myself. I just work at trying to be mindful of the space and the environment and to bring what is needed of myself in that given moment. When it comes to politics, there's difficult decisions that I've made. There's different policies that I've made, and people have judged me negatively. But I always say, this is my life. This isn't politics for me. This is my life. You know, at the end of the day, you really have to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you made the right decision for yourself, because doing something that's not authentic to yourself will carry. For me, it does. If I do something that's not true, I start thinking about like, I should have done this, I should have done that. If I do it according to what I felt was right at the moment, then I can live with the consequences, because that's really reality.
Excellent. Thank you. All such great advice. I'm over here taking notes. So this kind of segues into the next question. So what is some advice you share with young women entering a male-dominated field?
I kind of talked about that. I think it goes with the theme of being your authentic self. Oftentimes, you're driving in the car, you're listening to your favorite song, or you get these weird thoughts in your head, or maybe it's just me, but I know some of you guys do too. I know you do. And you just think of, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or do you think that was a right decision? Or, man, when that guy said that to me, I should have choked him out. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But you think all of these things in your head. And I think that's called like self-evaluating. And because if you go through life just making decisions and you don't take time to pause and evaluate yourself, you could be destructive and not know it. And so I think it's really important to take a pause, take a breath. And, both of you have mentioned it, having a plan and setting a plan. And so what I would tell someone that's entering into a field that's male dominated is first to have a plan. That first impression when you step foot in the police academy, to that first impression when you meet your first training officer, to that first impression when you have to go testify in court. Have a plan. Oftentimes, how you show up without saying a word is the perception that people will have on you. And so having a plan means going to bed early, making sure I shine my boots. Did I study the penal code sections? Am I knowledgeable? How does my hair look okay? Does my uniform have a tear in it? Being ready. so that no matter what gender you are, you show up prepared with the plan and the knowledge. And I think if you block out the madness and those voices in your head and you just focus on doing the right thing with a plan, you can get through it. And, there's how many of you heard of 30 by 30? You heard 30 by 30? 30 by 30 initiative. So it's crazy that we have to have this initiative, but 30 by 30 was an effort to try to get law enforcement agencies to be 30% women by the year 2030. So we're in 2026, right? So that's 4.5 years away, and we haven't moved the needle. Where LAPD's, what are we, 18%? Thank you, Susie. LAPD's 18%. That percentage is larger than most organizations. And then the question's been, why haven't we been able to move the needle from 18% for the past 20 years? And I think it's our messaging, it's our marketing, but I also believe that there's self-doubt in women believing, can I do this? Can I see myself in this uniform? Can I raise a family? Can I carry a gun? Can I get in a fight? I have 31 years in LAPD. I've never used my gun. If you look at the media, you'd think that I've used it every day, all day. 3 decades I've been serving this city and I've never been involved in an officer-involved shooting. I've raised 6 children on this job. I went back to school and got my bachelor's and then my master's. And so I think sharing our story and sharing our plans and demystifying what public service is all about is what we need to do to move the needle in this work. And then once you do get there, having a plan. And then I think it's really important too, to surround yourself with like-minded people to get you through the tough times. And some of my biggest supporters have been men. And I look at Dr. Southers here, and there was a brief moment where I was almost going to leave the Los Angeles Police Department for another opportunity. And he was one of the first ones to call me and say, don't do it. We need you. And I'll never forget that phone call. And I'm glad I didn't. But so are you. And so I think, I know I'm kind of talking about 3 different things in one, but I think they all kind of meld in together. But having a plan, being confident, asking the questions, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, creating spaces for you to, you're not weak if you're having a bad day or if you make a mistake. You don't have to carry that alone. Grab a friend and say, hey, I think I screwed up. What would you have done? What is your opinion? I think being open to that will make you successful in a world where there is this predominant male-female workforce.
I was recently set up. I have a boyfriend. I was set up to meet, to meet him. And I'm only sharing this because I was having dinner with a bunch of girlfriends, and we're talking about dating, et cetera, et cetera. And I told her, it's like, I actually don't meet men anymore. I mean, I don't meet anyone that it's like dateable anymore, because whenever, or even girlfriends, I don't really meet new people anymore, just because you reach a level in your career that you go into a meeting and you're basically doing the work, and everyone who's working there either is, you receiving orders from you or they're a colleague. And most often I'm probably the only woman in the room, so my meetings are very much, a table of 5, and I'm the only girl. I'm the only woman there. I'm negotiating a contract. I'm the only woman. And, so that environment leads to obviously looking at yourself very differently, because I do negotiations. So I have to get to a point where there is agreement that there's not, you're not highlighted, you're not seen as a woman, but really just a negotiator, someone at the table. So you're able to to some extent, take away that label of being a female and just really doing that role. But obviously you're aware of who you are at the table. So my recommendation to you is, like she just mentioned, being prepared. There's a book that I live by that I recommend all my interns to read, which is The Four Agreements. It was given to me by my boss later on in life, and I really do live by that. So the four agreements are as follows. You do everything to the best of your ability. You don't make any assumptions about people. You don't take anything personal, and you live with integrity. You know, the last one took me a long time to understand. I read it. I mean, the book is really small. It's a Toltec philosopher, by the way. It's classified as New Age here in the U.S., but Toltec philosophy is huge. If you're into, indigenous communities and philosophies, I mean, literally, he's a theorist, no different than, Aristotle or Plato. To my response, you have to do everything to the best of your ability and be prepared for that reason, because then you don't have any regrets. If you come prepared, then you know that whatever mistake or whatever repercussion happens, it's not because you failed to do something. Similarly, when you walk into the table, you don't make any assumptions about people. They might be having a bad day. They might be having a great day. They might not, you don't know what their background is. Similarly, they don't know what you're all about, right? So you can't assume that they know what you want at the table unless you vocalize it. And then the last one is living with integrity and being true to yourself. What do you want to get done in that environment? And if you live with those four principles at every stage, at a very minimum, I'm not saying that it's going to solve all your problems. And I do go home and I do ruminate and I overanalyze what it is that I did and what I can do right at the next meeting. But at the very minimum, I could leave at peace with what happened at that, at that incident, at that environment, at that negotiation. So you can't ever forget that you're a woman, but you have to sometimes just put it aside and take role and remember that first and foremost, you're a leader and you have a role in the room. And I think by always having that in mind, it'll just take you to the next step.
What happened to the date?
So what happened to the date? I am dating a guy that is the smartest, most loving, kindest person I've ever met. He's an aerospace engineer, master's, super genius, right? It's not rocket science. He literally does rocket science. He has like 2 spaceships in Mars. Like, no joke. That is who I'm dating.
Good job. Good job.
Love that. I'm definitely wondering myself. Like, are we going to circle back to that? So yeah, being a woman in a male-dominated field, the first thing I'll say is there are some things that should certainly be ignored. And I remember, people have said things like, well, Michelle, your voice is just so high.
Yes.
Or one of my favorites was, your hair's just such a distraction. Oh, my Medusa, does it move? So there's certainly some things to ignore. And to that end, what I've learned over time is that being a woman is one of my greatest strengths, hands down. I've really learned to embrace being a woman and being a woman in my field. A couple things I've learned. First is that I had to learn to speak the language. And I think this is true whether you're in a male-dominated field or any field. You have to learn what the language is. Is it a very objective-driven conversation? Do I need to get to the point quickly? Do I need to lay my points out in advance and then substantiate them? What does my posture need to look like? What is everybody else's posture? Is it broad shoulders? Am I standing up? So you have to learn the language. You have to learn how your peers and your bosses and the people that you want to influence listen and watch how they communicate so that you can engage in a meaningful conversation with them. They will listen to you and you will be able to exchange ideas better if you learn to speak the language. That's the first thing. Second thing is to learn the culture. Again, this is true whether it's male-dominated field or any other field. What is the culture like? Is it a very collaborative culture where everybody sort of gets a turn and then they talk and then we commiserate and then we come to a consensus on something? Is there a lone leader, maybe with a single influencer, and you need to engage with that influencer to help the decision maker come to a conclusion? So you need to learn the culture of whatever organization you're joining, and you need to learn how to function and mirror that culture so that you can now be part of the team and you can collectively contribute and be seen. And it was really hard for me to learn that, especially coming right out of college. But I did. I studied it. I read about it. And once I learned sort of the language of business, the language of engaging with law enforcement, the language of engaging with public health, and I learned the culture, things got much easier. And it's something that I think you continue to refine over time. You continue to observe and learn and figure out how to lean in.
Thank you. And to Councilwoman Quintana's point, The Four Agreements is an excellent book. It's something that I reference every few years just to kind of bring me back into, why I'm doing this. And so, yes, I just want to echo that. And this will be my last question, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So can you share a setback that shaped your leadership and what it taught you about resilience?
I'll share. It's personal, but it kind of goes into my professional. So setbacks. 4 years ago, my son was killed by a drunk driver while away in college. And it was something that I did not think I would ever wake up again from. And I remember a couple of weeks went by, and my daughter's a student here at USC. She's graduating in May. She's at the School of Social Work. She's going to be a licensed clinical social worker. But yep, fight on. My pocketbook is broke, but proud of her. But I remember she was at Texas Christian University, and she looked at me and she said, Mom, I think I'm ready to go back to school. And it had been a couple of weeks. And that really pushed me back in my chair. My 20-year-old just said she's ready to buckle up and go back to school. And I looked at her and I said, well, then the day you go back, we'll fly you back out to Fort Worth and get you settled. And then Mommy's going to go back to work too. And the things you can learn from the steadiness of your child, or someone younger than you. You talk about listening and surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and listening, is immense. And so, she was my hero in that moment. Mommy, I'm ready to go back to school. Well, shoot, let me shine my boots. Let me get my uniform out of the cleaners. Let me look at any policies I might have missed in the past 6 weeks. Let's go to work. And so I think for me, going through that experience, 4 years later, it still feels like it was yesterday, bringing that with me in how I serve and what I do at work and relating to pain and tragedies that community members go through, has really been transformational for me. But then also taking that and being able to tell other people you can get through it no matter what it is. I got in a car accident. I got divorced. My daughter is in a domestic violence relationship. No matter what it is, taking that pain and that experience and paying it forward, I think is my base and what got me through that. And as a leader, everyone's watching. Oh my gosh, she's coming back to work. What do we say? Do we give her a hug? Feeling embarrassed, like I don't want the attention. I just want to go to work. And taking the opportunity to lead and show people through a tragedy how you can bounce back and continue to serve and make a difference. So
thank you for sharing that.
My condolences, Chief. Oh, that's
So
okay.
I didn't mean to go that deep, but this is real. Jesse said be real, so I'm being real.
One of my hardest lessons has been the people part of my life, both professionally and personally, and I feel like I'm still learning it. But what I am learning is that it is so critical to have the right people in your life, whether we're talking about your mentors, your colleagues, or in my case, the people that work for me. I'll start with a quick mentor story. So I love having mentors and highly recommend and engaging in mentor relationships in your life. But there was a point in time when I had two mentors in my life, and they were both government contracting industry leaders. I felt so privileged to have them in my life. And came a time when they said, "Hey, Michelle, can you share with me what your goals are?" I thought, oh, what a great question. I can't wait to answer this. Had my answer lined up. And the first mentor, again, very predominant in our industry, I laid out my goals and I said what I wanted to do and had grand plans. And this mentor, he said, "Oh, Michelle, you're aiming too high. You're gonna level set. Too many things that you want to do." And I was taken back. I was really taken back because I thought this is somebody that I could trust and I thought could help me achieve the goals that I had identified, but I wasn't deterred. I was not deterred. So then about a week or so later, I had a call with my other mentor, female mentor, and I was a little bit hesitant to share the same goals with her, but I thought, you know what? No, I'm not going to let this other naysayer get me down. I laid out my goals. She listened, pregnant pause, and she said, "Michelle," and I thought, oh boy, here it comes. She said, "Michelle, I challenge you to aim higher. I think your goals are not big enough. I think you can do more. I want to have a conversation with you again in 2 weeks. I want you to think about this, and I want you to aim higher." And so for me, it really underscored the importance of having the right people in my life at the mentor level. Had similar things occur at the colleague level and even the folks that have worked for me. And overwhelmingly, what I found is that if I am lucky enough and selective enough, if I can perform that right assessment to have the right people in my life, what I've learned is people know other people like them. I don't know if you have experienced this, but usually if I have a phenomenal employee and they give me a referral, that other employee is going to be phenomenal. And if I am lucky enough to meet a great colleague, hardworking like me, like-minded, mission-focused, if I meet that kind of a colleague, when they introduce me to their buddies are just like them. So for me, a big lesson that I'm continuing to learn, I'm continuing to refine for myself, is the importance of surrounding myself with the right people and figuring out exactly how to do that.
Thank you. I have two setbacks that I think have shaped my life. One of them, which was a blessing in disguise, is that, I didn't pass the bar the first time around, which is a really big deal, right? It's like a bragging right. When you're a lawyer, you pass the bar the first time, right? I had difficulties passing the bar. And it was very humbling, right? And, again, I'm an Ivy Leaguer. I never had a C in my life. I mean, I take tests, like, what happened? I can't believe I bombed this. So it was very, very humbling. And it kind of takes you back professionally. I felt at the time that it was catastrophic. It's like, oh shoot, I bombed it. What am I going to do now? Because my life had been kind of very linear, right? I've high school, college, master's, law degree, passed the bar. You're supposed to be working now. And I found myself without a license because I didn't pass the bar. So and in my family, there's no such thing as not working. The bar exam is offered only twice a year. So if you bomb it the first time, you really have to wait 6 months to take it again. And again, it's only offered twice. So my family was like, okay, so what are you going to do now? It's like, well, I have to take it again. It's like, okay, so what are you going to do now? It's in that, and I understand. It's like, well, I have to study to take it again and again. It's like, what are you going to do now every day? Right. So, at that time I got my real estate broker license because, my family was, you kind of become the attorney in the family. Right. And one of my relatives was looking at property, et cetera. And then I had a fellowship, with, Tom Girardi's firm. And, he's a plaintiff's attorney. We have history, but he's also an investor and he did real estate development. So I shadowed him a lot. So I ended up getting my real estate broker license because, after you study for the bar, there's a section on property law. You take the bar exam. It's like the easiest exam, right? So I took it there, and lo and behold, I found myself with a career now in real estate finance. And that failing that bar exam really opened my eyes to realizing that there's not just one path, that you don't have to follow what most people do, right? You put your foot step on the other. And I found myself with an entirely different type of career that's much more flexible, that has taken me to public office. I am an attorney. I do negotiations. I always say I'm not the typical attorney, even though I very much, now after practicing for 20 years, I realize that I am just like many attorneys. But at the time, I felt like my trajectory was deviated in a very catastrophic way, so it ended up being a very, very huge blessing in disguise. That coupled with the fact that my father passed away in 2004 or 2007, like a couple years after I graduated from law school. And he was my biggest hero, right? Again, whenever I had any doubts, I went back to him. So his situation was that he retired. A week later, he went to the doctors for my mom. The doctor tells him, you need to go to the ER. He goes to the ER. He's told, you have stage 4 cancer, 2 months to live. And he passed away 2 months later. But so it was very much like, this is someone who has worked his entire life to provide. And he only had a 1 week retirement and then he passed away, right? So I felt that. So that coupled with the fact that when I graduated from Yale, I had a job that I didn't like. So I was coming home really late and he tells me, if you don't like this job, then quit. Find something that you like. And it's like, but it pays well, et cetera. He's like, no. I didn't come to this country for you to settle for the first job you get. He goes, that's for me because I don't have skills. So I have to take whatever comes my way. He goes, but you speak the language. You just graduated. You have a lot of energy. Figure out what it is that you want to do and find it, et cetera. So that, coupled with my dad's death and his message and failing the bar exam. And during that time period, because I graduated from law school in 2004, didn't pass the bar. My father passed away in 2007. During those 3 years, I struggled with passing the bar, finding myself, figuring things out. And I do feel like those 3 years were very, very transformative in the way that I live my life now, which is really to be true to myself, to find something that I enjoy, to appreciate the resources that I have, all the blessings that I have, and putting that forward to make his life worthwhile and make my life much more enjoyable, and meaningful. And I find joy in that. But let me tell you, those 3 years were not easy. We're very humbling. And just trying to figure out who you are is a big, it's kind of reaching adulthood.
Thank you, everyone. And just, touching on the mentorship and surrounding yourself with great people, I think that has been such an important factor in my life. And one of my mentors is in the room, Dr. Errol Southers, and he's also my son's godfather. And he has a book coming out, so check out that.
I'm sitting here and preaching all this, and I'm like, dude, I haven't worked out in 5 days. It's really hard. I love music. I love to dance. And so what I said I was going to do this year is wear my Beats by Dre, put on my favorite hit list, and just dance. And my husband will come home and I'm like, like I'm just in the house just with my beats, and I just dance. It takes me away from work, the calls, the homicides, the this, that. Just dance. And it's simple. It's something, you can just take you go to a different space. And so I know that sounds silly, but music is just therapeutic, So I dance. I don't do well with managing my own stress because I want to be all things to all people because we're just in that business. And so something else that for 2026 that I said I would do is listen to myself. Like I talk to myself a lot. I write things down now. I've told myself to slow down. And it's okay. You're not a loser if you slow down. And so I think the music and then writing things down and slowing myself down has been like my stress reliever.
For me, it's my family. They do a lot. And my boyfriend as well. He's a windsurfer. So he's beach bum, right? So the people that are in the ocean, I'm convinced, are just zen. They really are they're just calm. You know, I call him my merman because he jumps in the water and I'm afraid of the water. I'm not a good swimmer at all. But my family keeps me very grounded. I don't have any children. I have a 30-year-old niece who has 2 daughters. So like they're my grandbabies. And keeping very true to that. Like I very much need that along with my friends. My friends are all positivity, you know, because you have haters, right? You have friends who are not really, they're like frenemies. I can't have those people around me because there's just too much going on in my life. And time is very limited, right? You only have 24 hours in a day. So you spend like 8 of them sleeping, 8 of them working, and the other 8, you kind of just have to figure it out. So that I think is key. Surround yourself by people who bring out the best in you, people who ground you, who bring that happiness out, because our work is difficult. It requires a lot of attention. It requires a lot of presence. And, you know, I didn't even honestly, because I enjoy what I do, because again, my philosophy in life, I didn't realize how complex my life was until, again, my boyfriend mentioned it. He's like, you have so many balls in the air. He goes, I don't even try to keep up with you anymore. It's just like, what do you need? And it took someone like him to vocalize it for me to understand that I do. I have this, I have Belle, I have my career, I have my family, I have my projects. It's a lot. So you need to keep yourself and find what works for you. If it's dancing, it's great. You know, like I literally last night I was mentioning that I was playing with my 1.5-year-old. I literally was like putting things up in the refrigerator for like half an hour, right? That's huge in terms of billing, because as lawyers, we bill by the hour. So every 6 minute counts. And here I am spending 30 minutes playing with a 1.5-year-old, putting things on the refrigerator. But I think at the end of the day, that helps. That helps a lot.
You get 8 hours of sleep?
I wish.
Oh, like, whoa, that's good.
I'll offer one tip and one trick. Tip is that you have to prioritize it like every other important thing in your life. And what I've learned is that if I don't do the things that ground me and make me whole, like working out or spending time in nature or eating well, if I don't do those things, I don't show up well at work. I don't show up well as a wife. I don't show up well as a mom. So just like I prioritize professional development or being on time, I have to prioritize self-care. And I am selfish about it. I will schedule time for a massage. Yes, I will. So that's my tip. My trick is, and stick with me, this might sound counterintuitive at first, but my trick is, if something goes awry that may stress me out, I walk all the way through the absolute worst case scenario all the time. Worst case scenario could be XYZ. And I sit there for a second and I figure out okay, if that happens, and that's the absolute worst case scenario, it might sting, but I think I can get out of that. So anything else in front of that is easy. So I do that often, and that works.
I do that too. Catastrophic thinking.
Yeah.
All right. I'm afraid we're out of time, but I do want to offer, if any of the panelists have any last remarks or anything we didn't cover that you wanted to share, we have about 1 minute left.
I just simply want to invite you to my city. You know, it's a great community. We have great food. Happy to tour you. I think one of the things that works really well in my community is that we have community policing. You know, about a third, public service is huge in our area. So I actually, doing panels, realized that a third of our workforce, a third of our PD alone are Bell High School graduates. So the fact that I came back to serve my community, it's like, you know, it's part of who we are. But come, I'll take you out to lunch. We have great restaurants.
www.joinlapd.com.
I love it. I'll do one more, and that is to pull up those behind you. You know, we are right now standing on the shoulders of the women that came before us. So any opportunity that you have to pull someone forward, please do that. Use that opportunity. Be an influence in their life for good.
Thank you. And just one more thank you to all of our panelists. It's been an honor to be with you this morning. Such great advice that I've taken. So again, just thank you. And just a last round of applause for them, please.